In some cultures, like the United States, there is the persistent stereotype that atheists are angry people. Though this attitude has changed over the last couple decades, many have also found confirmation of this bias in the seemingly antagonistic behaviors of the new atheists, Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens in particular. According to popular religious media like the 2014 film God's Not Dead, atheists are angry because they are miserable, and they have chosen to blame their misery on God. On the other hand, there may be important implications for the non-believing in how their outlook affects their health and well-being. It has often been remarked upon that the lack of a social support group among atheists, similar to that encountered in many religious communities, can be a significant disadvantage to personal well-being. A few recent studies can help to shed some light on issues such as these. One 2016 study published in the Journal of Religion and Health collected data from over 3,000 participants in the U.S. looking at a number of factors related to health and well-being. 80% of the participants identified with some religious affiliation, while 11% listed no preference, 6.3% described themselves as agnostic, and 2.8% identified as atheist. In terms of health, the study considered things like subjective health, body mass index, chronic conditions, present symptoms of disease, and limitations on activities of daily living. To quote from the study, the religiously affiliated were found to have significantly higher mean BMI, more mean ADL limitations, and reported suffering from more chronic conditions than atheists or agnostics. They also reported more symptoms of disease than those with no religious preference. Interestingly, those that listed as no religious preference were closer to the affiliated on BMI and ADL than they were to the other unaffiliated groups. However, atheists and agnostics did not fare so well on health behaviors also measured in the research. Smoking and alcohol consumption were significantly higher for them than for the religiously affiliated, with those of no preference making up the middle ground. Yet no significant difference was observed in illicit drug use, nor was there much variation in exercise among atheists, agnostics, and the religious. In addition to all this, it's worth noting that the median age of atheists and agnostics in the study is nearly a decade younger than it is for the religiously affiliated. A similar trend was found favoring well-being in the religiously affiliated and those of no preference, who reported higher mean happiness and self-esteem, as well as lower anxiety. In contrast, atheists had lower death anxiety than these groups, and fared about equally to them on life satisfaction. Here it's also important to note that the very same study provides evidence of lower emotional support, given and received, among atheists and agnostics than among the religiously affiliated and those with no preference. Atheists and agnostics reported higher loneliness too. Another study published just a few months ago online in Psychology of Religion and Spirituality might give us more to consider in terms of well-being. David Speed and Karen Hwang used data from over 1,700 respondents in the U.S. to evaluate the relationship between self-rated health and happiness, along with certain religious measures and other variables. They also divided up respondents into 4 categories: atheistic nuns, for those who do not believe in gods and identified themselves as not religiously affiliated; atheistic sums, for those who don't believe but are affiliated; theistic nuns, for those who do believe and aren't affiliated; and theistic sums, for those who do believe and say they do have religious affiliation. Responses were then distinguished as theist, atheist, some, and none. Framed in this way, the study actually found more theists than atheists answered that they are not too happy, while more atheists described themselves as pretty happy. Only at the point of very happy did theists beat out atheists on happiness. What's of further interest is comparing the figures between the theist and some categories and the atheist and none categories. Their closeness is striking. The paper's authors say this suggests that the relationship between religion and spirituality and well-being is due more to how one self-identifies than to whether or not one is religious. This last point serves to draw attention again to the critical role that social support plays in personal well-being. A third study we'll look at used a sample of 451 participants from Taiwan, made up of 10% Christians, 20% Buddhists, 25% Taoists, and 43% atheists. Consistent with the minority status of Christianity in Taiwan, Christian respondents reported the lowest subjective well-being, followed by atheists and Taoists, with Buddhists reporting the highest. There is substantial literature available linking stigmatization and discrimination with indicators of psychological distress, such as anxiety, depression, substance use, etc. Melanie Brewster and her colleagues make note of this in the publication of their Measure of Atheist Discrimination Experiences, or MADE, which seems to be the first instrument of its kind. They have developed MADE with the assistance of over 1,000 atheist respondents in collaboration with sociologists who have studied atheism and through convergent validity with another accepted measure of stigmatization. Not only does this lend further credence to the problem of lacking social support among atheists, but it may prove to be a particularly useful tool in assisting counselors that work with nonbelievers. From all of this, it should be abundantly clear that there is no evidence to demonstrate a connection between atheism and poor health. On the contrary, atheists are doing quite well overall, it seems. Of course, that's not to say everything is perfect either. Before I wrap up this video, then, I'd like to speak to agnostics and to my fellow atheists. We talk a lot in atheist circles about what atheism is not, and the broader implications these debates and concepts may or may not have to them. But this shouldn't make us wrongly feel like we're an island, like we're too rational to have normal human emotional conflicts, or that it's somehow betraying some coveted status of stalwart atheists to share with someone else the worries, frustrations, and doubts we experience as atheists. So many religious figures and religious teachings have done great psychological harm over the centuries because they've taught people to stifle their instincts and keep their questions and problems to themselves, or otherwise surrender them to a God that doesn't seem to be listening either. If you've felt isolated, ostracized, stigmatized, anxious, or depressed, please consider seeking out therapy. I know some of us don't like even the idea of going to counseling, but nothing else can really substitute for it. In one of my previous podcast episodes that's available to listen to at any time, I spoke with Gail Jordan, who's the executive director of Recovering from Religion. In that interview, we discussed some of the numerous resources their organization provides for people who have left religion or have just experienced doubts and struggle to move on. There are people out there who would love to listen and love to offer their help in any way they can. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, or share it with others online. For more content like this, you can check out godlesshaven.com, as well as our Facebook and Twitter pages. Anything you can do to support us is always much appreciated, even if only helping to spread the word. But we also have a link to donate at the top corner of our website. Until next time.